there, and welcome to Road Trippin' with Steve and Marianne, and we're going to try and give you a few tips on how to drive on what we'd call the wrong side of the road. We're on the A82 in Scotland, going north from Glencoe. Eventually we're going to get to Inverness, but this will probably only get us as far as Fort William in this video. The key to driving on the wrong side of the road is, of course, where do you drive? And the obvious thing is, if you're in a rental car, your driver's side is the right side of the car, which means keep the center line on the driver's side. That's the number one tip. The next tip is probably a good idea just to follow what other cars are doing for the most part. It's a whole lot easier in traffic because you just sort of cruise along watching their back ends, and that's the best way to go. Another good tip is, of course, to get my book, Road Trippin' the Isles, because I've got a full explanation of the road signs and how they're used. They're pretty obvious, most of them, but there's a few little tips along the way that you can find out. Things like a paddle marker that has 3 slashes, then you'll find one with 2 and then 1. That's telling you how far it is to the next turnoff, road crossing, or whatever that might be. The biggest issue we find in all of this is, of course, roundabouts. Most of us Yanks don't really do roundabouts that well. We don't really even build them all that well when we have the darn things. But they're not that hard, really. It's about planning for the most part. If you pre-plan your route pretty well, then you can be sure that you know where you're going. Know where the next stop is and the next town is along the way, because that'll help you a lot. Now this is a normal intersection. You'll see the green light there. That's just kind of normal. When you get to the roundabout before, there'll be a big sign on your left that has lines and a sort of a half-completed circle. And that's the one that's going to tell you which exit you want to go. It's also important to read the road signs that give you distances so you know what's the next town, because usually on the roundabouts they'll just tell you which way to go on the next town. Mostly they'll tell you what route to be on if it is a major route, but usually it's just about where's the next town going to be. So if you keep an eye on that, and then figure and have your navigatrix tell you, okay, count and tell you how many exits till the one that you need beforehand, then you've got it pretty well planned out. And then you actually count and point to each one as you go through. We'll get a chance to see how that works in a bit. Notice that as the speed limit changes, they've got small signs that are a white sign with a red circle and a number in it. In the UK, that's miles per hour. Over in Ireland, that's kilometers per hour. So kind of get used to that. If you see a white sign with a blue diagonal stripe, that means you can go back to the national speed limit, whatever that might be. And in most roads outside of towns in the UK, it's 60 miles an hour. Or in Ireland, about 120 miles per hour, or kilometers per hour, I should say. A lot of times, too, you'll notice they're painting it on the street, which is also helpful. Now, we're coming into towns. You'll notice, too, that the center lines are dashed and double-lined, just like they are here in the U.S., so that makes life easy. They also do an interesting thing on side roads. They'll have that double line over on the left side. They've got the solid white line that goes along, and then you've got the dashed line. That'll tell you that that's a diverging route. which will tell you, keep going straight is probably what you're wanting to do, unless your GPS or your map tells you to make a turn there. So let's wait up until we get to the roundabout. As we go through some of these towns, you will have also probably noticed that a bit back we saw that white sign with the diagonal stripe. That means we're blazing along at about 60 miles an hour here. You'll also notice signs that have something that looks like an old-time camera. That means there's a speed camera up ahead, maybe. Don't think that there won't be. Even if you're in a rental car, they catch you, they'll give the rental car the bill, and before you get to return it, you get to pay up your tickets on the way out. At least that's what we're told. We never got caught, which is nice. Signs that are in brown with white lettering, those are points of interest. And that's always kind of a nice thing to be able to look for. Okay, here's our first roundabout, and we want the first exit. Okay, there's only really two here, so watch as we go along here. Traffic that's in the roundabout gets the right of way, and then you get to go on your direction and follow the signs. You'll see the sign off to the right. The other polite thing to do is, as you're exiting the roundabout, signal that you're turning to the left, because obviously you're going around them clockwise, not anti-clockwise like we would. But it tips off the drivers who are trying to get into the roundabout that you're making a turn. And of course, don't forget to cancel your turn signal when you're done. These little villages and towns, traffic can get a little bit congested. You'll notice that we just passed a speed limit sign, so you need to reduce your speed. They have signs or painting on the road, left turns and right turns, turning lanes and that kind of thing, just like we do. And you'll notice too some nice arrows down there that tell you which direction you should be going. Got another distance sign up there. Make sure you know which way you want to go and what's the next town on the list. Because that's going to be the key one for you to find. Now we're slowing down because that's what it says, because we're coming up to something here. Bit of a curve in the road. Those triangle signs with a red outline, those are sort of your warning signs. What we would look at is a yellow sign, usually one of those diamond-shaped yellow signs we have here. They use much smaller signs than what we have, so you do kind of have to look careful at all of these things. They also will have a sign with one of those triangle signs that has an exclamation point, sometimes even a skull and crossbones. That means there have been some serious accidents near that area, so you probably want to take a little more care while you're going through there. Now, driving on the wrong side of the road, after you get there going a little bit, it becomes pretty easy to do. Mary Ann, when she tried it the first time, we were in a motor services area, what we'd call a gas station, basically, off a motorway. And she drove around a bit in the parking lot just to get used to the controls being on the opposite side. And one of the weird things we found out is the mirror placement. We're so used to looking down and to the left and up to the right, we sometimes forget you have to look up to the left for the rear view mirror and down to the right for the outside mirror, and of course over to the left for the other outside mirror. It takes a little bit of practice to remember where your mirrors are, and of course always make sure they're properly adjusted. Some of these roads get pretty narrow, and like I said, this is what they call a main road in Scotland, which means there's coaches and lorries, trucks and buses sharing the road. And some of those towns you go through, man, those streets are real narrow, and a lot of those coach drivers and lorry drivers, they don't always stay on just their side of the road. We were quite glad to have a narrow little sports car like the Triumph in a lot of those places, because those roads haven't been changed since the Middle Ages except for putting some pavement down. Like they say in Britain, or in England in particular, any straight bit of road was probably originally built by the Romans. Everything else is twisty. Scotland also has a whole lot of single track, way up in the Highlands in particular, and boy, those are an adventure. Single track means one lane, two directions, and a 60-mile-an-hour speed limit. There's turnouts to either side, and it's kind of, it's not really a game of chicken so much as trying to be polite. Move over and let people by, you know, coming towards you, and you know, the next one you probably should be able to, they'll let you over. If you're going over to let somebody by, flash your lights, and that'll tell them it's okay for them to pass you, and they'll give you a little toot or a wave. People are very, very polite. The other thing we noticed over there is hardly anybody tailgates, and out on the motorways, those are what we would call freeways, everybody stays in the slow lane unless they're going to pass. You don't get fast lane hogs out there, and you do not get people passing on, well, we would say, the wrong side, or the passenger side. The one or two times we saw it, everybody in the traffic honked and flashed their lights and yelled at the guy and gave him the two-finger salute, which is what we have as a one-finger salute here. It makes people very unhappy, and they let you know it. Guess what brand car it usually is? Yeah, BMWs and Audis, just like here. One of the other tips I found that was quite interesting to do is before the trip, we'd go to good old Google Maps and get the satellite on, get the street view, where you can drive along and you can kind of practice on some of these roads virtually to see what the areas look like. Now in towns it can get a little confusing. GPS can be your friend, but remember, GPS is not an absolute. It does have a tendency, especially in weird places up in Scotland or back and beyond in Ireland, to not know where it is or where it's going. So always have a map with you, always have an idea of where you're going, what the towns on the route are, and having a good navigator is just such a help. And Marianne has decades of experience sitting in the passenger seat with me, and always gives me good information and spots things, and you work as a team and you talk things out. Now the hardest thing we've always found is making a left turn or a right turn. That's where you can get all bollocksed up. Visualize before you're going to do it what lane you want to be in. If you're making a left turn, you want to be in the near lane. If you're making a right turn, you're in the far lane. But look at it, think about it, point to it, and have your navigator point to the same lane, and that gives you that kind of boost. There were a few times when we did it wrong, and usually they recognize, oh, it must be a stupid Yank who just never has done this kind of stuff. But they'll kind of stop and wave, and you kind of wave back and look stupid and sorry, and they'll let you pass. But think about it beforehand. The only times we really had a problem is when I wasn't really thinking too much and just naturally went to the wrong lane. It just, my gosh, and quickly got over to where I was supposed to be. Another one of those speed limit signs we just passed. You'll notice that the roads are very well marked with directions, for curves and falling rocks. They're all pictographs because in Europe there's so many languages, they don't try to spell things out. They're certainly not warnings. Other signs that are important, a big red sign with a white horizontal line, that means no entry, just like it does here. A blue sign with a P means you can park. They also mark the roads. If there's a zigzag line on the side of the road, that means no parking. They also, in towns and cities, will put big X's through the intersection. That shows you it's an intersection, and just like here, the light turns red or whatever reason, don't stop in the middle of the intersection. They will bust you for that. And since they have speed cameras over there, the police are free to actually patrol and do their job, which also makes things a whole lot nicer, believe it or not. Speeders just simply caught, got their picture taken, and they get a ticket in the mail. They get points on their license. They rack them up pretty fast, to where they will say, nope, you don't get to drive for another year or 2 or 3 or forever if you've had too many points on your license. The other thing to remember is up in Scotland, in particular, the DUI limit is 0.06. That's 2 points lower than it is here in the US or down in England over in Ireland. So you've got to be very careful of that. You just don't have a pint of nice ale or cider for lunch, because that'll put you real close, if not over the limit. Remember, pints are 20 ounces there. That's a lot of beer. So just don't do it. Think designated driver and wait till you're at your destination and then sink a few pints. That's when it tastes good at the end of a long day. You'll notice that there's a lot of wide parking areas along the road. Those are great if you've got a line of cars behind you to pull into. If you're just not sure and want to let them by, go ahead and let them by. Or if you're just a little tired or want to take a look at the lovely lock that's off there to the left, you can pull in there, take a bit of a break. And often, what's really kind of fun is that there's trailers there that offer food and tea. You can get a nice cup of tea and probably a bacon sandwich or a cheese sandwich, and it's not terribly expensive, and the food is actually pretty good. This is how these people make their living, so they really can't turn out slop to you. Notice just how close some of those trucks get. It can be a bit frightening. Along roads like this, even here and anywhere else, we'll drive with our headlights on. You'll notice a lot of people are. It just gives you that little bit more visibility. Some of you may be asking, why don't you pass that car? You're clearly a faster car. So, well, A, look at the traffic that's coming. It's fairly heavy. And B, the old Triumph is left-hand drive, which means I'm completely on the wrong side of the street, which means Mary Ann has to kind of lean out and look around the cars for me and tell me if it's clear, and then I can go. So that's a bit dodgy, and we tended to not do it. notice too in Scotland as well as Ireland and a lot of parts of England, even though we're here in August, late August, the roads are damp. It does rain a lot. So damp roads are sort of the norm there, which means your braking distance is not quite what they should be. So you always, give plenty of room, keep your head on a swivel, all those normal driving tips that you've got to do, which is kind of tough because you want to look at the scenery while you're there. But man, sometimes driving on the road is more important to get you to your destination. If you want to look at stuff, find a place to pull off, safe place, pull off, stare at the scenery for a while, and then get back on to driving. You notice that most cyclists and pedestrians there too tend to wear high visibility vests or even full suits like that last guy. They're very big on that kind of thing. It's a good idea to have a high-res vest in your car if you should have to stop on the road somewhere by the road. Put that thing on. People are kind of looking for it, and it will help you out a lot. This summer there's also a lot of cyclists. Make sure you give the cyclists plenty of room. One of the nice things we discovered both in the UK and Ireland is driving for people isn't so much a competitive sport. They keep that for the racetrack, and sometimes people will drive briskly if the road is free and open. But mostly it's very relaxed. We rarely saw anything even close to road rage. In fact, hardly anyone ever honks their horn. So it's a much more pleasant, much more relaxed feeling. Just try to keep to the speed limits. Like I said, they do have those cameras. And they do have police patrols, which are white cars with alternating blue and day-glow yellow checks. So you can really see them. And they don't play gotcha like our cops here do. They're not in stealthy black cars, hiding behind bushes and signs and whatnot, hoping to snag the unwary. They're actually more out there to try to help keep the traffic flowing and safe. So it's kind of a nicer attitude. And of course, remember, they don't have guns either, which is kind of nice. So I've pretty much covered everything on the basics of driving on the wrong side of the road. Mostly, be careful, enjoy yourself, kick back, and have a great time as you're cruising through the roads of Ireland or the UK. It's can be quite relaxing, and it's not as dangerous and fraught with perils and stress as you might think. After a few miles, you kind of fall into the rhythm and the pattern, and it's just like driving here, except for those few little tips that you want to keep aware of. So I'll let the video run out. You can enjoy the beautiful scenery as we cruise alongside the loch there, go through the little villages. Maybe you'll find a nice pub that you can stop for a sandwich or a bowl of chowder. Fish and chips, of course, is always a popular favorite. Don't stop, by the way, at those places that sell pizza, kebab, curry, and fish and chips and deep fried everything. Those places will give you a bad stomach, believe me. We've made that mistake, and you just don't want to do it. If it just does fish and chips, it's probably pretty good. If it does all that other stuff, it's worse than Mickey D's or Jerk in the Box or any of those clowns. So enjoy the rest of the drive as we wind through this little village. I think we've probably got a roundabout coming up. You can kind of watch for yourself. How would you do this? Watch for any kind of red signs like that. That little guy with a shovel, that means there's road work. Here's the roundabout here, and we want the first exit to continue on our route. So watch how we do it. We get in here, we follow along, we slow down, we look over to the right. There's no traffic, that's great. Had our blinker on to let people know. Cruise through the stoplight. 40-mile-an-hour speed limit through here. And we're just nicely cruising along. And their traffic lights do the same for us. They're red on the top, yellow in the middle, and green on the bottom. One of the things they do is before your light is going to change from red, they'll show red and yellow to kind of warn you, put your car in gear, because most cars over there are standard transmission. Here's another roundabout. So which way do you want to go? They usually give the thicker line as the main road. So watch, here we come up, we have to slow down. This is sort of a 2-lane one, and we watch over to the right, nobody there. And now we're going the other way following that truck. You see, so that's when we put the signal on and off we can go and follow the direction we want to go. Now, if you make a mistake, you can keep going around and around the roundabout, or you can go up to the next intersection, make it, turn it around, and you're fine. You notice we're on a 2-lane street here in this town, so I'm going to get by the truck. Ooh, and then it narrows right down again. Don't like following trucks, especially as you saw a big old thing of plastic came off. That doesn't do the old car much good. So like I said, I'll just shut up now and let the rest of the video go. Have a great trip over there, and don't be afraid. And find my books on www.mccarthypicks.com. And have a great day. Bye now.